Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders past and present and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. I'd like to welcome all members of the public who have come along tonight to observe our proceedings. I'd like to advise those present that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and/or image is broadcast. Manningham Council would also like to acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. All council meetings are controlled by a meeting procedure local law. I'll introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda by calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on any item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I'd like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda, public question time, which provides people with an opportunity to ask questions of the council. Questions must be registered prior to the commencement of the meeting to be asked. If we do not have the information at hand to provide a meaningful response, the question may be taken on notice and a response provided in writing. I will also stress that I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to Council through the normal channels. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Item 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. There are no prior notifications of conflict of interest. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Climate. We'll just wait for the phone. If you do have a phone, it'd be good to put on silent now.
That the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 24th of July 2018 be confirmed.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Piccinini. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 5, presentations. It is with sadness that I note the recent passing of Mr. Hayden Park. Mr. Park was an active member of the Manningham Recreation Association for many years and will be fondly remembered by the Park Orchards community for his generosity of spirit and service to others. Our deepest sympathies are extended to Mr. Park's family at this difficult time. Item 6.1, petition for open space facilities for local residents and sporting clubs, Heidi Ward. Do I have a mover? Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the supplementary petition with 266 signatories requesting Council to urgently lobby the state government and the North East Link Authority to secure sports and open space facilities for local residents and sporting clubs before any existing facilities are displaced by North East Link be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Goff. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And carried. Item 7, public question time. We have received 3 questions. Sorry, first, I'll talk about Mr. Tester. We have 2 questions from Mr. Vincent Tester. Mr. Tester, would you like to come forward to the microphone, please? Vincent, you have 2 minutes to make a brief... No, stay there.
No, sorry. I'm not 100%, so I've written them down because I've got a really bad cold.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please accept my apologies.
So if you have 2 minutes to make a brief introduction, and then if you could ask your questions, and we'll give you a response.
Well, may I say good evening, Mayor and councillors. The importance of having a transparent procedure in any process is paramount. A transparent process creates credibility and builds confidence within the community. When there isn't transparency, it creates the perception within the community that something is amiss. A case in point is the Hillcott Drive assessment of the flood overlay. The expert witness report compiled by Mr. Swan of Cardno and the assistance of Mr. Kearney, Melbourne Water, set a criteria in removing flood overlays. Yet, the same criteria principles that have been applied to Amberwood Court and McCallum Road have not been applied to Hillcott Drive. By not applying this criteria across the board equally, residents of Hillcott Drive are under the impression that something is amiss. Accuracy of measurement has also suffered with the C109. I have received from Mr. Roger Woodlock, Manager Engineering and Technical Services Manningham, and Mr. Kearney, Melbourne Water, that LiDAR measurements are extremely accurate. Councillors of Manningham, as you are aware, I supplied the panel measurements that resulted Hillcott Drive to be reassessed manually. The results of the ground level reassessment confirms original measurements were not accurate, in my opinion. There are 30 houses in Hillcott Drive, and all 30 houses appear to have an inaccuracy in metres above sea level. My house recorded 420mm inaccuracy, and 38 Hillcott Drive 570mm inaccuracy. That's approximately the length of your arm. The ground survey measurement confirmed that discrepancies do occur using LiDAR technologies only. These results vindicate the accuracy of ground level measurements and the importance of ground survey. The Manningham C109, when it began, had approximately 10,000 houses with overlays. Do the discrepancy in Hillcott Drive possibly transfer throughout the municipality? That's my 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So your question being...
My actual question is...
No, I think you have 2 questions.
2 questions,
okay,
yes.
Great.
Now, my question is, I previously provided measurements in Hillcott Drive to be reassessed. I provided further proof that discrepancies, the appearance that they have occurred again. These measurements below prove that the 16 Hillcott Drive is not flood prone, in my opinion. The Manningham City Council engineers, will the Manningham City Council engineers confirm the accuracy of the measurements that I've provided below? And these are the actual measurements I have sent to the council for appearance. That's my first question.
If I could ask you to sit down.
Yep.
And I'll defer the answer to our Director of City Planning and Community, Angelo Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thank you, Mr. Tester, for your question. You have provided the question earlier, so I have prepared a response, which I'll just read. So, firstly, no further groundwork surveys are proposed to be undertaken as part of Amendment C109. As outlined in the Council report, this amendment has gone through a comprehensive and inclusive statutory process, including the independent planning panel appointed by the Minister. The panel has considered the modelling taken by Council and Melbourne Water through its consultants and determined that the levels used are appropriate for the purposes of this amendment. Furthermore, as you've pointed out yourself, based on the information and questions presented to the panel, Melbourne Water was directed to undertake further detailed ground survey of the Hillcroft Drive area to determine if these properties may flood. The work confirmed that numerous properties in Hillcroft are prone to flooding and that the SBO1 should apply as outlined in the council report.
Mr. Tester, would you like to ask your second question, please?
If I may read out, my property has a retaining wall at the boundary, same as McCallan Road and Amberwood Drive. My driveway has much steeper incline than Amberwood, whose drive is located in Hillcroft Drive. So why has my property a flood overlay when it meets and exceeds the two properties named do not have a flood overlay? My question is, why? What is going on? Why are you not applying the same principles? I have proved that my measurements are accurate, and your response is you will not
Mr.
confirm
Tester,
the accuracy of my measurements. That is
Vincent?
despicable.
Vincent, thank you. We've got the question. I'll ask Angelo Columbus, Director of City Planning and Community, to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you again. Mr. Tester, look, the flooding modelling is quite complicated, and I appreciate the work that you've gone to try to demonstrate the differences between the levels between your property and other properties. But there are other factors at play, and I'll just read out again a statement that I've prepared. So the potential risk at the property at Amberwood Court that you mentioned was considered by an independent panel, and based on the expert evidence, the panel concluded the potential flooding at that property was minor and that the overlay could be removed. The modelling indicated that the flooding at that property in Amberwood and the Hillcroft Drive properties are subject to overlay and flow paths from different areas and different sources. So that explains partly why one property doesn't have the overlay and another does. If I could go on and just explain, the Amberwood Court property is subject to water flows entering the property mainly from the Hillcroft Drive along the southern boundary. These flows at the property boundary are of a lower flow depth when compared to the flows at the front boundary of other Hillcroft Drive properties. And on review, the SBO1 extent originally shown was assessed as being overstated for that property and recommended to be removed, as I said. By comparison, the Hillcroft Drive properties located on the south side of the road are subject to overland flow paths, not only from the Hillcroft Drive, coming down Hillcroft Drive, but also from the local catchment to the south, basically coming from behind. As a consequence, the flows along the front property boundary are deeper than in the other case that you mentioned, which is why the expert evidence and the panel and Melbourne Water have recommended that the overlay should apply to the properties as shown in the report on Hillcroft Drive.
Thank you, Angelo. We have also received a question from Ms. Chan. Ms. Chan, would you like to come forward to the microphone, please?
Hello.
Well, you have 2 minutes to introduce your question and then you can ask.
The expert witness review quotes on page 5, section 6.1.2, criteria 1. Properties adjacent to flooded roads removed from SBO if the flooded area of a property was entirely within 5 metres of a roadway and the percentage of the property affected was less than 10%. Why did you not apply these criteria to my property on Hillcroft Drive?
Thank you. Sit down. I'll again defer to Angelo Columbus, Director of City Planning and Community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for your question, Ms. Chan. Look, the response is similar to what I've stated for Mr. Tester, and I agree. The expert report provided guidance about properties abutting roads, and that the model flood extent within the private property may be excluded from the overlay in those situations, as you pointed out in your question. And I think the report talked about within 5 metres and no more than 10% of the site. So in the case of the Hillcroft Drive properties, as I've said, the original modelling and subsequent detailed ground survey work indicated that these properties will be affected by flooding associated with overland flow paths travelling down Hillcroft Drive, as well as overland flow paths from the local catchment from the south. So those properties are affected by 2 separate overland flow paths. And whilst the full flood extent is not proposed to be included in an overlay, as you may be aware, Council abandoned the SBOs over the local drainage system. This information still forms part of the modelling that the consultants in Melbourne Water have used and require consideration when applying the extent of the overlay and how we apply those principles, that principle that you mentioned and other principles that are in the report. So based on the full modelling of the full flood impact, so from along the road and from the back of the properties, it's been evident from that modelling that there's more significant flooding expected along the Hillcroft Drive, and these properties do not meet the criteria that was outlined in that early report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Angela. We also have a question from Mr. Frank Frischke. If you would like to make your way to the microphone. Just 1 minute.
I'll return shortly.
So you have 2 minutes for introductory statement and then you can ask a question.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. This is in relation to an ongoing program of getting support from the council in relation to a resolution around the Yarra Valley Country Club. And my question, and will only be one this time, will Manningham Council continue to do everything in its power to ensure that the Yarra Valley Country Club has an advisory committee process adopted to assist in resolving the opportunity for this local soccer clubs to have a home before the North East Link wipes out the much of the Bulleen Park from 2020, as we understand it. That's when that work is going to occur. I'm sorry that you didn't get it, this question. I did send it to yesterday, but for some reason it didn't get through.
Thank you, Mr. Freshy. You sit down. I'll ask Angelo Crumbus to respond again. Thank you.
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Freshy, for your question. Look, the brief answer is yes. The council's doing a number of things to try to support the intent of your question, which is to ensure that there's no net loss of active sporting facilities because of NELA. So we're actively talking to the Link Authority. We're talking with our neighbouring councils, and we're also talking actively talking with the State Planning Department in terms of the process that they're currently undergoing for the Banyule Bulleen Precinct Structure Plan, which potentially could be subject to the process, the advisory committee process that you've described. So we are dealing with it at a number of fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo. Item 8, admission of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 9, planning permit applications. 9.1, planning permit application number PLN 18/0117 for 799 and 801 Doncaster Road, Doncaster, and 1 Law Street, Doncaster. Use and development of a childcare centre for 158 children and alteration of access to a road in a road zone, category 1. I have a mover for that motion. Councillor Chen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Most of the major planning applications before council for decisions are residential developments. So it is so refreshing that this time, this application before council is a childcare center application for 158 children with 34 basement car parking. This site is adjacent to a Doncaster Road and activity center. Substantial changes is anticipated. I understand that a planning permit was issued in April 2017 for 37 three-story apartments. This application is for a two-story childcare center. The maximum building height is reduced from 11.5 meters to 9.5 meters. The site coverage is reduced from 59.8 to 45.3%. The setbacks, the separation of the childcare center from the adjoining properties, car parking areas are sited away from the residential boundary. The visual and acoustic privacy of the adjoining properties have been considered through the siting of play areas.
Excuse me, Councillor. People in the gallery, if you could please not talk while councillors are addressing the council, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Continue, please continue.
Through the siting of play areas, windows and doors. Overall, the application complements to the nearby residential development occurring along Doncaster Road and other main roads in this municipality. I move to support the application be supported subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
I think Councillor Chen has covered most of the reasons for approval of this application. I just want to add a couple of things. Already mentioned that this particular location had a permit earlier this year for 37 dwellings, 3 stories and 2 basement car parking. So obviously replacing it with the proposed structure is much, much better for everyone concerned, including the fact that that particular area of Doncaster continues to grow with families and so on, and a child care centre would be a welcome addition to the area. This application satisfies and complies with all the requirements. What else? The site has good access to public transport networks and will have good access to pedestrian networks. What else is there? The site is located on a main road, we mentioned that. It satisfies also the car parking requirements, which are 0.22 spaces for every child. And that comes down to 34, and that's exactly what the application is providing. The other thing is they are doing a number of positive things to make this centre pleasant to the surroundings. They're planting 38 trees on the ground level, and they also landscaping the first floor, so that's a good thing. Generally, it meets the traffic, car parking and driveway construction criteria, and generally is an application worth supporting and approving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Are there any speakers against? There being no further debate, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Carried. Item 9.2, planning application PL 17/02790 at 196 to 198 Circles Road, Templestowe, for the use and development of a childcare centre for 146 children the removal of native and exotic vegetation, and the display of internally illuminated business identification signage. Do I have a mover for a motion? Councillor McLeish.
Mr Mayor, I move that the councillor's alternate motion number 1 be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this is not the easiest of applications for us to consider because it puts a childcare centre into the low-density residential zone in our city, in the Koonung ward. But what we do see before us is a property in Templestowe that is quite some size. In fact, it's instructive to actually compare this property in this application to the one that we've just passed. Here, this proposal we see before us at the moment is on 3,874 square metres. The previous proposal was 1967. The proposal before us, it's a 29% site coverage. The one before was a 45% site coverage. The one before us is a single-storey development at 7.85 metres. The previous one was a double-storey development with basement car park, and the building was 9.5 metres tall. The previous one was 158 children. This one has been reduced within the recommendation from 146 to 138. So we have a much smaller building envelope on a much bigger lot with fewer children. And one of the reasons we have that outcome is because this council in 2010 implemented some reforms to the low density residential zone. It was Amendment C110, and in implementing those reforms, we very specifically set out to ensure that non-residential uses in the low density areas of our city were constrained in a way that they never had been before. Constrained to ensure that developments of this sort occur on roads that are subject to traffic, that are a reasonable volume of traffic. Now that's a subjective point, but Serples Road in this particular circumstance is a fairly busy road. And we required developments in this precinct to be subordinate to the bulk and scale of the surrounding residential developments. And that's what we see before us in this proposal, councillors. We have a single-storey proposition. It has a similar footprint to a house at 29% on a 1 acre lot. It has a similar form, a built form. It has a gabled roof, a similar look and feel to a residential property. It's set back 10 metres from the main boundary and from the side street boundary. The 10 metres is a very substantial setback, ladies and gentlemen. If you have a look at the developments on Doncaster Road, you'll see that they're not set back 10 metres. They're set back 1.5, 2 metres from the side boundaries. It's a very different proposition when you're on Doncaster Road. But when a property is developed in the low density residential zone, it must respect the neighbourhood character and be subordinate to it. Those are moves that the last council made to try and ensure that we do not get excessive, monstrous developments that we have seen in the past in this zone. You just go a few doors up from this development and you'll see the boot of an aged care facility that is a very substantial concrete monolith that really substantially fills the lot, and it's because in prior years Manningham Council didn't have controls on residential and non-residential uses in the LBRZ. So I am pleased to propose this particular motion, councillors, because I think it is in keeping with what we championed as a council to protect the character, but to allow incremental change. And incremental change is what happens in the city. If you go back 40 years, there was farmland here. Go back 50 years. This site had paddocks around it. It has gradually changed over that 50 years to the point that it is unrecognisable, and we'll see similar gradual change in the LDRZ. We see it with some of the McMansions that are thrown up on these properties. So I've proposed a minor amendment to the officer's recommendation to ensure that on the northeast boundary, an acoustic fence is put along that boundary as well to protect the amenity of the immediately adjoining neighbouring property in a similar way to that is happening on the rear boundary.
It's a concession that the resident, one of the residents indicated would be of some assistance. I appreciate it's a change, but in the end I think it's a modest and an acceptable incremental change because it's on Surfers Road. If it was in one of the back streets in this area, it would not be allowed under the new rules that this council implemented in 2010, and I ask my fellow councillors to support it.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I believe that government from all levels encourage workforce participation, but mothers wishing to return to work always find it very difficult to find a suitable hours or available childcare center for their children. The high property price make it very difficult for a new child center to be opened in our municipality. But council could play a role by encouraging quality childcare center by good planning. And when I look at this proposal, the site coverage is only 29% of the entire property. The size is 3,874 square meters. And the permit will be conditional on the developer to construct a pedestrian path. And also there are generous setbacks. As our fellow councillors mentioned that before, there will be good quality acoustic screening, and also the traffic flow assessment. I know that the flow will be generated mainly based on parents or the childminders' work hours. So I understand that this particular site is in a low residential development zone, and also it is away from the main road. But just because of these characteristics, it is very difficult for this particular development to satisfy all criteria listed in our planning scheme, clause 22.05. We have to balance on all criteria and make a very difficult decision. But on balance, on this particular report from our officer, I have no choice just to second the developments based on balance of all considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I rise to speak against this motion for the development of a particular childcare centre here. Normally, I would look at this, and in fact, originally when I looked at it, I was satisfied with the size, and everyone's coming out with site coverage and everything else with regard to that. But there are a number of issues that make this area different. And one of them is that Councillor McLeish was quite right. Everything around there is unrecognisable from 50 years ago, except the roads and the gutters. Basically, Serples Road is a road originally built and sealed to provide orchardists to drive to their farms and properties. In the 70s and 80s, it was subdivided into the 1 acre properties, which in that surrounding area gave Doncaster and Templestowe at the time the prestigious situation of being elevated above other particular areas in Melbourne because of the style and size of land. It gave a special nature to Manningham to be a little bit more upmarket because of the 1 acre properties. This council recently did support the concept of 1 acre properties. We wanted the maintenance of the fact that we, in our low density residential zone, we can keep the 1 acre size, and we were able to do that. But it is a 1 acre residential area, and that low density residential is at odds with some other uses that are going into the area. These areas are under threat, Mr. Mayor. These areas are under threat of major change because one by one, the blocks of land along the undeveloped Surples Road are becoming high intensity blocks, high intense use, even without a shopping centre or anything else around. They're becoming a high use. The primary school at Surples is running at over 1,000. I don't know what St Charles next door has got, but I believe it's in the 200-300, maybe 4. We've got the Bupa Centre, and this is being accessed by people from all over Manningham and probably other suburbs. And they're coming along King Street, which we've narrowed and make very difficult, and then into a T intersection. We come in from a little Smith Road. If you've ever driven down it, it's a little lane, and for goodness sakes, don't veer off the road at all, because you will ditch your car and not drive any further. And at the other end, we've got encroachment into the area from the fire brigade. Now, this is putting a pressure on this particular area. Now,
Just, time's up. Would someone like to move? Thank you. A mover, seconder, Councillor Zafiropoulos, Councillor McLeish. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And carried. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Now, we talk about site coverage, but believe me, we don't, and saying how it fits in with the character of the area, well, we really don't have facilities with all of those. If you just look at page, 85, and look at the development, we don't usually have all of those car parks and things like that within the area. We've got playgrounds around the outside. In fact, the whole area is taken up. Now, I do understand that for developers of these sorts of facilities, nursing homes, childcare centres, other sorts of, these sorts of things, it's cheap land. It is cheap. And that's why it's happening here. And we are under pressure. And that whole area is under pressure from other sorts of development other than the residential development of the 1 acre. And indeed, we're going to have to, at council, if we let this go through, and believe me, I've got an alternate recommendation here for refusal if council don't let this one come up, on the grounds that it is going to basically change the whole amenity and flavour of the area, and that our own council infrastructure, roads, drains, footpaths, intersections, is not up to the capability of the high intense uses that are going down here. And again, and what it was said, if this one gets up, well, next door can do another one, because, well, there's one next door now, and there's one next door. And before long, that area will be dominated by these sorts of services, making the 1 acre properties that feed into that to get in and out of extremely busy and difficult and dangerous. There is a danger involved in all of these people trying to get in and out. So, councillors, I urge you to vote against this, and I have a motion for refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Are there any speakers for? Councillor Hayes.
Ask a question?
Councillor Holmes.
Mr Mayor, through you, the residential zones, I believe, is for residential use. So they do childcare centres on residential zones. What other things are allowed? Because Councillor Goff has said other uses. I'm just concerned that it will become used, other properties will be able to expand and do other things. So can you please clarify what the residential zone entails and what restrictions are on around these 1 acre blocks?
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Perhaps Angelo.
Briefly, the objective of the zone, as I understand it, does allow for other community activities to be located in residential areas. So often, you know, churches, medical centres, and obviously childcare centres are normally permitted. I'll just have a quick look at the some cafes are permitted. a convenience shop could be permitted. So although it's a low density zone, it does allow for other uses that actually complement, local living. And as has been said, so the community has access to the services locally.
Thank you, Angelo. Are there any, Councillor Zavropoulos?
I do agree with Councillor Goff's objections to the centre, and I'd like to point out, whilst I was supportive of the previous childcare centre, we need to contrast the two areas. One is an area where it's growing, lots of families are going there. This particular area is not growing. It's an ageing population. It's highly unlikely that any of the, within a kilometre or two, people residing in the area will be using the childcare centre. So basically, we are making available one of the most prestigious spaces we've got for someone to build a childcare centre so that people from, 5 kilometres and from other suburbs perhaps to come in and use that facility. This is not acceptable in my view. Look, I don't have the knowledge that Councillor Goff has about the area and what transpired in the last 10 or 20 years. However, I did take the opportunity this afternoon to drive by and have a bit of an inspection there. And it's an area with a lot of properties that we ought to be proud of. Really beautiful properties that once you start messing around by allowing, even though, yes, it might be permissible by the planning scheme, but we have, this is why we have as a council the ability to reject a property even though it's allowed on other grounds. And the grounds are the ones that Councillor Goff described, and I'm happy to add a few more. We talked about 29% of the building, but have a look at all the other things that are putting there. I think Jeff mentioned that. It's going to be not 29%, it'll be a lot bigger. Sherpas Road is not Doncaster Road. It's not a thoroughfare. It's not a large road that lots of vehicles, lots of transport, public transport and so on. There isn't anything like that. The public transport that there is very limited, and it only goes to a few specific destinations. I should also mention something that was stated by one of the objectors, and that is some 11 years ago, we rejected a similar application on the basis of congestion and traffic flows and the surrounding road network. Now, 11 years ago, things have got worse now. So, given that this council 11 years ago rejected a similar facility on those grounds, I think we should do the same now. The other thing is I do agree that we do require to encourage our residents to work within the area, to utilise facilities such as childcare centres close by. But let us pick a better place than the one this application is nominated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zavropoulos. Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Galbally.
Yes, I would just like to make a comment on a couple of, react to a few things that Councillor Zavropoulos has mentioned. I think I took umbrage to the fact that we're talking about 1 acre blocks and not for families. They are very much for families, and they actually house probably larger families than what you would find in your Doncaster apartment blocks and smaller houses. So by putting up an argument that we should only sort of build these childhood centres on main roads and in the not so privileged areas, to me sounds a bit elitist. And I believe that we should have this across the board, and every region should have their child care available to them. whether you live in a 1 acre block or in a small apartment in Doncaster Road, it should be accessible to you. We shouldn't have to travel too far to drop off our children, whether we live in a 1 acre house or a 50 square metre apartment. So alongside with aged care facilities, I think childcare facilities are equally important, and if not just as much. We've got a school there. If this road's got a bus, yes, you know, the road can be upgraded, and I'm hoping the council do that at some point. I think we do have a policy in place that we do want to upgrade our roads and make them a bit more user-friendly, so we don't have all these gutters and whatnot. And so with all that, I would just like for us to sort of look again and see the importance of our growing population and the growing need for the dual working families, dual parent working families, which, you know, in this day and age is important. It's the only way people can survive is if both parents are working in many cases, and that includes your 1 acre blocks. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more speakers? You can against technically, but it's okay. You can speak.
Look, this is a very hard argument, very hard application. It could be a lot worse, but I struggle with accepting this based on the fact that we don't have the infrastructure there. We need curb and channel. We don't have the infrastructure, and my thing is, if this goes ahead and gets passed, and a childcare centre goes in, we need to seriously have a look at and a conversation as councillors about getting the infrastructure up to date with this changing neighbourhood. I'm not comfortable with it, but I understand we need childcare centres, but there's one being built on a main road in Reynolds Road, a substantial one, you know, and I hear both points, and we've got to cater for our community, and yes, you know, our schools are overflowing with young families, and yes, both parents need to work in this day and age. We need childcare centres, but there's sometimes a place where you put it and sometimes a place it's not. I'm not all that comfortable with it being placed right there where we have current problems with regards to you know, access, people getting out safely, with regards to onto the roads, you know, turning left or turning right, both from Smiths, from Wayamba. Yeah, it's just these are situations where you look and you think to yourself, well, you know, you weigh it up. It could be, it's not an ugly development compared to what it could have been, but I still struggle with the fact that in Serpils Road, the Golden Mile, and that's what it's known as, how long is it going to remain the Golden Mile before, and it just keeps growing on and on and on. And our community is not against development. People say, we get that things are changing, but there's a place to do it, and there's a place where it isn't so suited. Yes, we did make strengthening to our planning scheme, but in that's not always foolproof, and it doesn't always mean that we'll never have these hard decisions to make. But this is a hard one, and I'm not comfortable with it. And yes, it ticks a lot of boxes, but there's some strong boxes that I don't feel, in knowing our community and knowing what it wants, that this is appropriate for this place.
Thank you, Councillor Climate. Any further speakers? Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been toing and froing. Look, I'm speaking for the motion. 21 years ago, my daughter went to Serpil Primary School, and then my other daughter a number of years later, and I took kids even up until recently that have started at Doncaster Secondary College to St Charles. So I've worked within those two schools for many years. And I've travelled those roads, and I actually, when people come from overseas, I take them on that tour of what you called the Golden Mile, of what we have our prestige area of Doncaster. But hearing what the officer has said, and also looking at the planning application that fits within the planning scheme, and also the amendment that has been put forward. I speak for this amendment and for this motion. The fact that we have an increasing population and overflow of schools, childhood education. I even know a pregnant woman at the moment that are registering their children to childcare centres and being put on waiting lists. And there are families moving into those homes, just as Councillor Galbally has said. These are homes that have families in them, that have raised kids in them. So to say that they're for the elite is something that I don't support or agree with. So I believe that there are many people that have owned those homes, and I know that from being in those homes, and also the infrastructure issue. The Smith Road as well, I've travelled it many times and will continue to. I hope that we as councillors, now that I am a councillor, not just a mum that drives down those streets, that I do get to have a say on how that infrastructure does move forward at a quicker rate. But as this application will meet the needs within the community and is set back, and it will not cause too many extra problems throughout the area, I ask that councillors support this motion for the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Goff, you're first. Councillor Cheney.
So I speak against the motion. I can't bring myself to support the councillor's recommendation that we approve this planning permit. I've been listening to all the submissions, and to augment the submissions against this motion, I would add the lack of public transport. So there's basically only one bus, which is the 278 that goes to Box Hill Station. So as part of our planning scheme, the Manningham Planning Scheme Clause 2205, which was put in place to restrict or large developments in the low residential zone, one of the conditions was that it be on a main road and there be good public transport. Circles Road is not a main road, as my fellow councillors have pointed out, and it also doesn't have good public transport.
Thank you, Councillor Piccini. Councillor Goff, do you have a question? The officers?
I do.
You done?
You don't have to.
Councillor McLeish, you have a right of reply, 2 minutes.
Mr Mayor, Serples Road is not a quiet little road. This 1 kilometre section of Serples Road has 6 or 7 streets running off it. It has an aged care facility, say Charles Borromeo Primary School. It has the Holy Cross Centre on it. Just around the corner it has another primary school on Tucker Road, and Tucker Road leads straight into Serples Road. It has a bus running along it that runs to Box Hill Station, as we just heard. Councillors, we can't abandon the controls that are in the planning scheme and make refusals on flimsy grounds back to VCAT. Our job is to make decisions, in my view, on the planning scheme in the rules that are in front of us. We don't get to make it up as we go. We don't get to give our community false hope that these things will actually succeed. We are here to make the difficult decisions for the community within the state planning scheme that we are given. We don't get to control what buildings are permissible in this particular zone. The permissible buildings, whether they be residential or non-residential, are laid down by the state government in the state planning scheme for Manningham. We were able to craft some changes, we're able to protect the 1 acre lots from subdivision, and we're able to tighten the planning controls. And this particular development, in my view, fits within those controls. If we simply kick it down the road to VCAT, all that's going to happen is an amended set of plans, potentially worse than this set, get approved by VCAT. And I don't think we should be here selling false hope to this community that this busy little road, yes, it needs upgrading, but this busy little road has a brand new footpath on it. This development, if I understand correctly, will end up with a footpath out the front of it because the developers will have to build it at no cost to our council. And I think
Councillor, your time's up.
have to make a decision that fits the rules that are here in front of us, councillors. We don't get to make it up.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. There being no further debate, I will put the motion. Those in favour of the alternate one motion? Those against? Those carried? Thank you. Those in favour, please stand. We have Councillor Chen, Councillor Haynes, Councillor McLeish, Councillor Galbally, Councillor Conlon. Those against? Councillor Kleinert, Councillor Zafiropoulos, Councillor Goff and Councillor Piccinini. Thank you, councillors. Item 9.3, planning application PL 17/027661 at 463 to 535 Doncaster Road, Doncaster, for the use and development of the land for a two-storey restricted recreation facility health club. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor McLeish. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Haynes. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I don't intend to try and re-debate the entire proposition of this proposal we have here before us. We have already passed this particular planning application. What we have before us is a request from officers to refine the motion that we passed the last time. They're asking for that refinement to provide them some flexibility with which to negotiate with the developer in the forthcoming mediation session before VCAT. One of the challenges we have as a council is when we move amendments to officer recommendations is sometimes we can put things in there that are just too tight and don't actually give them the nuance that they need in order to negotiate a balanced outcome before VCAT in a mediation session. The tweaks that have been put into this particular motion provide for some good governance. They ensure that controls that we put on, such as ensuring that there was transparency maintained in the fencing. That transparency needs to provide for safety signage to go on that fencing. The way the motion was previously worded, it wouldn't allow for that. There are a few other tweaks in here. It does remove the 173 agreement. I can't say I'm particularly thrilled with that, but I'm listening to the officer's advice and I'm prepared to accept that their professional judgment is that it's not something that would survive through the VCAT process, and that it's not the right instrument for doing what I was seeking to do, and I should simply rely on the controls that exist within the planning permit in the other conditions that exist within the planning permit that we've already approved. So this particular thing comes back to us for another decision. Of course, it could be that the motion is lost and then we're in an interesting position. The officer's going to find it hard to negotiate from the existing approval that we've given them. So I ask my fellow councillors to simply approve what's here to provide the officers with the scope that they need to negotiate with VCAT, with the developer in the VCAT mediation session.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Haynes.
I just want to echo the comments from Councillor McLeish, because this is in VCAT and the officers are just asking for direction, and there's also things that have been discussed at length, and I'm certain that they will represent the council well. And as much as I don't even like the fact that this is becoming a health news, I do not want any development there. This isn't what we're here voting for. So I ask that fellow councillors support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Any speakers against?
Question?
A question from Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Basically, my understanding is that we are passing this recommendation to enable officers to negotiate to the best of their ability for our own interest. What I want to ask is, there are a number of conditions that have been added for the negotiation process. I'm just wondering if the applicant is willing to accept most of them, but not 2 or 3 others. Having passed this motion, does it restrict the officers from proceeding with it?
I'll defer that question to Angelo. Do you understand the question, Angelo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Look, no, it doesn't preclude us from trying to negotiate a different outcome if council want to do some further tweaks. If we don't get agreement, though, at the mediation session, it'll go to a full contested hearing. And that's where we run the risk of losing everything or winning everything. There's no guarantees.
Supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you.
Should we then amend the motion to enable the officers to be flexible about the conditions?
I'm not sure how we would do that. They're looking for direction. Is there a possibility of doing that? Is that
Mr. Mayor, there's no need to do anything more than what's been recommended. That'll give us enough clarity to go back to.
Thank you. Is there any more speakers against? There being no further debate, I'll put that in motion. Those in favour? And carried. Item 10, City Planning and Community, 10.1. Manningham Planning Scheme Amendment C109. Land subject to inundation overlay and special building overlay. Consideration of a panel report. Do I have a mover for a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I want to move a alternate motion, council alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. That motion has, for the people in the gallery, that motion has been distributed. It was at the front. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Kleinert, thank you. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I rise to speak to this, and hopefully this is the last time we see this issue come up at council for a very, very long time. Indeed, it's been a long process, and we probably finally have got there. We haven't made everybody happy, and we haven't made everybody sad. It has been a difficult thing to put through in Manningham, probably due to the topography of Manningham and the size of what we were initially trying to get to do. It had gone out. We had hearings with the people. We withdrew some of our elements in the past, and we moved earlier this year to go forward with just the SBO1s and the land under inundation overlays to go ahead with those. It has been, from that point also, a very difficult thing because of the individual cases that were represented into there. And I do have some sympathies for a community that are looking for a level playing field and a fair go and a policy that is implemented without, I suppose, other concepts to them. There are issues, I believe, still with the heights in some of those areas and the overlay, and we're not in a position really to make a decision on that. So I hope that that whole application is forwarded off to the Minister, but I do think it is important, Mr. Mayor, that we do request the Minister for Planning to actually review and consider removing the proposed application of the SBO1 on those properties in Hillcroft Drive and Headbrook Way. I think it is important that we do actually dot that I and cross that T, even though it is not us doing it. This is what Melbourne Water want up here, and I can very much understand that. But I do believe it is really important that we do go to the Minister to get him to actually view that, and hopefully then a decision is made by the Minister to put that application there. With that, it's been really long, and I would like to thank all of the council officers and all the people that have been involved in this. It's taken a long time, and I'm sure it's taken a big toll on one of our engineers, Roger Woodlock, and Lee Harrison, but those people that have been working in that area. It has been very difficult. It's been difficult for the Manningham community because they're trying to protect their rights and their little people, and they're going against organisations. And I'm proud of the fact that as a council, we have listened to the concerns of the community. We have made some adjustments. Now I just think that we need to get this process through and refer that last little bit to the Minister for his judgment, and that will close the case for us. So, councillors, I hope you support the alternate recommendation for the park chair.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Corner? Are there any speakers against? Councillor McLeish?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, probably not going to be very popular for saying what I'm about to say, but the problem I've got here, councillors, is where is SBO2 and where is SBO3? There are 9,000 properties plus in this city that aren't in this amendment. 9,000 properties that are impacted by flooding, potentially. From the council stormwater pipes, from the Mullum Creek, from the Coonung Creek, from the Rucky Creek. Where are all the other properties? Where are the overlays for all the other properties, councillors? We have liability for flooding from in those properties, councillors, because we haven't passed the SBO for those properties. We have kicked the can down the road to a future council to worry about liability for flooding in those properties because we haven't included them in this amendment, councillors. And a future council is going to regret the decision we've made in this amendment, councillors. I appreciate that there is support for this amendment, and I appreciate that we need to do this part of the amendment. SBO1 and LSIO needs doing, and what's here before us and what's been sensibly proposed by the councillor is perfectly rational. But we have not fulfilled our obligations as councillors in implementing flood overlays in the other areas, councillors. The maps are out there, the community knows the areas that might be flooded, but they're not going to be notified when they put in a planning permit. It's not going to be an overlay on a condition of sale of a block of land that may be subject to flooding. And we know from all of the detail that came before us, councillors, that there are properties out there that will be flooded in those areas. And this council will be faced in a future time, I predict, with legal consequences for failing to put the overlays on those properties. I object, councillors. I object most strongly. That being said, I think this part of the amendment needs to proceed for precisely those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Any other speakers? Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Mr. Mayor, I do recognise the importance of this particular recommendation, and I recognised it back in September when it came in with 10,000 properties that Councillor McLeish referred to. But at that time, the inaccuracies and the margin of error of the modelling made it very difficult for me to take such strong action that would have considerable adverse impact on such a large number of people. No one is arguing that we should not have any overlays for flooding. We all know that flooding is inevitable, particularly in this municipality. However, when we're reaching a decision, we've got to be very careful not to penalise people with inaccuracies. Now, this is why I moved the motion last September to exclude SPO 2 and 3 because of the inaccuracies. SPSO 1 and the SLIO were the responsibility of Melbourne Water, and therefore I felt that it would be going too far for me to be entering areas that I did not have responsibilities for, or council did not have. Now, again, looking at this case, I read things that made me wonder whether we still reach the level of accuracy. Now, reading what the panel deliberations are, let me quote to you. The panel has noted that Melbourne Water had clarified or changed its position in relation to a number of properties during and after the hearing. You know, I mean, when are we going to reach the point where Melbourne Water says, yes, these are the properties, these are the reasons, and for council then to have sufficient faith that the data that we're given to make a decision on are accurate. So even here, we're not getting it, even in this report. The panel, having listened to some objectors, it says, however, it agreed with submitters that there did appear to be some anomalies. And the anomalies were in relation to Hillcroft Drive. Now, the panel did suggest or recommended that Melbourne Water go and have a look to see if they made more mistakes. Naturally, Melbourne Water came back and said, no, we haven't. Well, council has to be a little bit more responsible on that. I do agree with Paul McLeish that at some stage we have to face this problem and try to resolve it. But not to ask the minister to consider taking those properties out is totally unfair if you contrast with our decision making in relation to other properties back in September.
Thank you, Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to ask a question first. If a property, there's 1,100 or so properties that this one is going to the minister for the SBO1 and LSIO. If a property does get the flood overlay on it, is there the ability for someone to, in the future, have it removed?
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I'll ask our Director of City Planning and Community to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, there always is. We're constantly reviewing the planning scheme. We're constantly receiving requests from the private sector for site-specific amendments. So if in future, even Melbourne Water, through more sophisticated modelling in the future, may propose further refinements as technology and innovation improve. So the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor
Okay,
Haynes.
I rise to speak on this. The SBO 1 and 2 and the SBO 1 and LSIO is before us today. The SBO 2 and 3 is not before us today. And I will say that Councillor McKeith mentioned a few creeks. The Coonung Creek that exists today backs onto Baronia Grove. And those properties have, some of them have embankments as they're put behind them and stuff. But that will be a Coonung drain in the near future with the freeway getting changed. And I'm very aware that the topography of Manningham will continue to change, as there used to be a dam down in that corner and now there's not. What we've got before us today is inaccuracies with mapping and inaccuracies with things that have even been said by the panel themselves. So what's before us today is to put overlays, to send to the minister possible overlays of 1,100 or so properties. And Councillor Goff has requested that those that we are very aware that have totally different mapping to what has been presented prior to us, and we have had very astute and busy residents out there trying to help us get a better understanding. I ask that we approve this amendment and overlay to go forward to the minister so we can move forward. And if in the future, this was brought up at the previous council anyway, so if in the future the SBO 2 and 3 come forward, then that will be an issue that council has to deal with. And none of us know who will be here, but all I know is it's going to be work, and just like everything else that comes before council and every other issue that comes before council, that's why we are here. We're here to do the work. And I just want to ask every councillor to support this motion so we can get this off to the minister. And I'm looking forward to some of these properties, when they do get this overlay letter and everything else, coming to us and saying, what are you going to do about it? Because I have a feeling this will never stop. This will never go away. We will always have people coming to us about this flood overlay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. There having been, Councillor McLeish, you've got something, a question? Thank you.
Mr Mayor, my question is regarding some of the techniques that's been used in the mapping of to establish the overlay. I'd like to understand from officers just what did the panel in their findings conclude that the high-level technique of using LiDAR to establish the general conditions of flooding in an area was an accurate and appropriate technique that is used across councils all through Melbourne? Did they find it's an appropriate technique? Did they find that it's accurate and fit for its purpose? And did they use it to apply the overlay in all the vast majority of the areas in Manningham?
Ask the Director of City Planning and Community to respond.
The answer is yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
So, if you'd humour me a moment, Mr Mayor. So, that's another question.
Okay, another question. Thank you,
So,
Councillor McLeish.
My understanding is that in a particular area, they found some anomalies with the LiDAR and undertook some more detailed study. Could you tell us why that would be the case and the outcome that came from that?
Yep. Mr Mayor, the report outlines that a number of residents in the Hillcroft Drive area raised questions about the levels and raised enough uncertainty during the panel process to the point where the panel suggested Melbourne Water do some further research and detailed survey. That was done and is outlined in the report, and as I responded to earlier to some of the questions, the findings were that those properties should still be subject to the overlay because of the significant potential for overland flow paths.
Thank you. Your question, Councillor Goff?
On the Hillcroft properties, what was the quantum of the difference in heights from the LiDAR data to them? 1 to 10 centimetres, 10 to 20 centimetres, 20 to 30 centimetres, 40 to 50 centimetres, or over 50 centimetres, which is half a metre height difference?
I hope we have that information, but possibly not. We might have.
That's in the report. It's in the submissions.
Mr Mayor, look, I don't know the top of my head. I'd have to look for it, but the analysis in Appendix 3, if that helps, notes that the flood level potentially is up to 42 centimetres in the Hillcroft Drive, but it varies from property to property.
There's a different question, but
yeah, that's a different question, because the question is it's around 50 centimetres or more, half a metre or more differences in the heights from the LiDAR. Wrapping up, Tom?
I don't think we've actually had a speaker against. There actually hasn't been.
Yes, we have.
It wasn't against the actual motion. It was, but I'll allow the wrapping up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And look, councillors, it has been a hard and a big effort to get to this stage. And I do believe that, on fairness for everybody, we've got a very good motion here to go forward. I will pick up on something that was said though in the debates. And that is, I'm not questioning anything more about heights and methods or anything else, but just addressing the other SBOs that had come up before. And that is something that not necessarily, it didn't say, and there's nothing in legislation that says that we have to put overlays on people's properties and titles to respond to letting them know that there are issues. We have mapping, which we can share. We can put it on our website. Now, anyone has to come. The only development that can be built on any property in Manningham is an as-of-right development, i.e. a house gets replaced with a house. One single dwelling on one single block where you don't need to come and get a planning permit. But for every other property that is around in Manningham, people are going to have to come to Manningham and they are going to have to get a planning permit, at which stage we can use any data and all the evidence that we've got, including all of those other maps of SBO2 and SBO3, to make suggestions to people and sort of enforce people build at certain heights and in certain places. Now, those sorts of things can be done. The only time it doesn't happen, Mr. Mayor, is when one single house gets built with another single house, and in that way we can make everybody know about our mapping and have it as soon as one of the big things that you open up when you open up our website, instead of saying what's on in Manningham, hey, look at your title and look at your maps.
10 seconds.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think we do need, in general, to pass this particular motion and refer it off to the Minister for his endorsement.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. There being no further debate, I will put that motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you. So we move on to 10.2, Amendment C122, Planning Scheme Corrections, consideration of panel reports. Do I have a mover for a motion or an alternate motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate motion, which I believe has been presented out.
Thank you, Councillor Galbally. So that's moved by Councillor Galbally. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Galbally?
Yes, just to clarify, this alternate motion is basically to approve the amendment C122, but with the abandonment of the inclusion of 136 and 140 Anderson Creek Road as a zone change from the GRZ to the residential growth zone. So what would I believe we would all remember this site pretty well because it actually came before us back in March, and it came in the way of a planning permit for a development of the existing gymnasium into apartments. Now, we actually scrutinised and we deliberated and we sort of set it up against, pitted it against the GRZ zone that was relevant, and it actually complied with the conditions under that zoning. We endorsed it, we passed it, it's gone through, and we approved it. So for now, for us to be considering rezoning this property, this site, which I have to say is an isolated site because everything around it is still going to be the general residential zone. So it would be just one site set apart from what is around it. And the reasoning that we're given with the submission is the fact that it would then comply and sort of with the Pines Activity Centre zone, which seriously, this site is so far removed and isolated from the Pines Activity Centre. It is on a very low-lying site, and it really has very little interplay with the activity centre. So with all that in line, I would like us to sort of approve the amendment C122, but with this alternate motion which abandons the amendment of 136 140 Anderson Creek Road, to rezone it, that is.
Thank you, Councillor Galway. Councillor Kleiner? Any speakers against?
Question.
Councillor Goff?
The Pines Activity Centre, does that just include the shopping centre, or does that include all of the buildings and all of the flats and units and everything else around it?
I believe so. I'll ask the Director for City Planning and Community to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, yes, it does include all those surrounding areas where we're seeing significant change in the form of apartments and townhouses.
Does it, Mr. Mayor, does it include parks?
Sorry?
Parks.
I'd have to take that on notice. It definitely includes those residential areas, but I'm not sure about the parks.
The parks that are around across the road is under the public parks zone. Yeah.
So just on that, a building opposite or diagonally opposite on land diagonally opposite where it was included in as diagonally opposite a residential area is still very close to or in a, I'm not against it, but it is right next to, it'd be sort of like saying shopping town and the high rise diagonally opposite are not within killie of each other. So I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to get an explanation of the comments just made before that this is removed from the activity centre. Indeed, it's right over the road from the activity centre, or am I wrong?
Thank you, Councillor.
Can I ask after another question?
I'll ask you. You can actually, you have a right to answer the question too, actually, but after the director has.
Mr. Mayor, my previous response was in respect to the Pine structure plan, not necessarily the zoning. So this site is included, as outlined in the report. The strategic justification for the recommendation is because Council's existing policy position in the form of the Pine structure plan suggests that that site should effectively be zoned in a similar way to the other areas on the north side of Reynolds Road and further to the west of Reynolds Road. So when I responded to that question, it was in the context of the activity centre structure plan, which provides the strategic justification.
So what I'll ask Councillor Galbally to just clarify the comments regarding that zone.
Okay. When I described this site as an isolated site from the Pines Activity Centre, it actually is also isolated from any of the structure plan areas as well. It is very much on the low side of the road. All the properties around it are single family homes, single level. There are no other residential growth zones in that corner, all the way down and further away. So if you actually stand on this land and look north, you will see the 7-storey building on diagonally opposite. That's as close as you would get.
Thank you. I think you've clarified that. Now, Councillor Goff, do you want to speak against the motion? Councillor Chen, question or speak against?
Against.
Thank you.
First of all, I have to say I'm really sympathetic to the objectors, and I really understand the objectors' concern. And if I were them, I don't want it at all, and I don't want to be included because I think that it's just a little corner away from the so-called shopping center. But the thing is, we have to look at the fact. We have the Pine Activity Center Structure Plan that was adopted by Council on the 31st of August 2010 after public exhibition and consultation. And after that, it was in our planning scheme, clause 21.25 and also 21.29. And this is in the plan activity, this site is in the particular activity center, precinct 4. And that is the only little corner along this, below the, on the south of Reynolds Road, on the east of Anderson Creek, just a little corner. If it is not included in the structure plan, I will support remove from this panel of this decision. But unfortunately, we have this in front of us, and this is in our planning scheme. So on balance, I have no choice. I could not just turn a blind eye and say that I support it, because it is in the structure plan, it is in our planning scheme. If we really want to remove it, we have to change it first. And just on the side note, this plan is to provide guidance to our community, how to do investment and how to do the planning for the whole community up until 2025. So we are here only 2018. So I'm sympathetic, but I have no choice to say I'm against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any more speakers for the motion? Councillor Galway, would you like to wrap up in 2 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councillor Chan. You sure have done your homework, and I thank you for that. Yes, the structural plan was set in 2010, yet this council in 2018 was presented with a planning permit under the GRZ, and we issued it under the GRZ, not the residential growth zone, which would actually allow an application to not only go denser than what we permitted, and what we were actually concerned about at the time, thinking that it was already too much of a change for that area. But if we do change it into a residential growth zone, what that would mean is that we could have allowed a much denser development with no necessity for garden area to be in the plan. Whereas now we have a pretty low basis point of usage of the land for the development. It actually works very well for the structure of that land, which is very steep and sloping, and because it's on the south east side of that intersection, anything that has any amount of height to it would just be an eyesore for anyone within that area. It would, and also the fact that it's only in that very small pocket. It's not as if it's a residential growth zone that's going to extend the length of the main roads on Reynolds Road and Anson Creek Road. So look, you all know the property pretty well. I'm pretty sure you all got your opinions, and I'll just put it forward and hope that you support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? And carried. Thank you. 10.3, Manningham Planning Scheme Review 2018. Do I have a mover? Councillor Climate.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeish. Councillor Climate.
The purpose of this report is for Council to consider a review of the Manningham Planning Scheme, which is a requirement that's undertaken every 4 years. Some of the key issues of this is that looks at neighbourhood character, residential development, transport, traffic, access and car parking, urban design, public spaces, activity centres and natural environment, including green wedge protection. Quite interesting when we looked at tonight and some of the applications that we were dealing with and debating on, you know, it comes out of the planning scheme. And it's something that we need to be reminded of, that why it's every 4 years is because we have to comply to somewhat to changes that are required to the planning scheme to respond to the state government reforms and recently adopted plans and strategies. So, you know, a lot of what we do is bound by what state government tell us we've got to do. We work out how best we keep Manningham, how we love it and want it, because all of us councillors do live in the area and love the area. But there's some realities to this. You know, this also takes into account the analysis of VCAT decisions and planning panel reports. So the fact that these reviews happen and are required are a good thing. They also take into account bushfire planning and vegetation management and car parking overlays. It's quite complex. It's part of what we have to do. It's quite simple, as complexity is putting our hand in just allowing the process to take its course is the simple part, but yes, it's a requirement of probably the hardest decisions that we have to make every month at a council meeting. And what it shows clearly tonight is that as best as we try, some things our state government, that's what they impose on us, and it's balancing that up to make the right decisions as best as we can in good governance of our city. So that being said, look forward to you all endorsing that.
Thank you, Councillor Quine. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this is the beginning, partway through the process of one of the most important things we have to do as a council in our term of office, which is to review our planning scheme. And it's the point at which the rubber hits the road for us to start to consider changes that we as a council want to make to amend the planning controls in our city and to try and represent the views of our community as best we can. Of course, the challenge in this is that it's a state planning scheme for Manningham. We don't actually control what's in it. The state controls what's in it. The Mandarins in Spring Street control what's in it. So we can propose all the amendments we like to the planning scheme, but they can just as easily be shot down by Spring Street at a moment's notice. And indeed, we did see such a thing quite recently when the state government implemented Amendment VC 148. And in Amendment VC 148, what the state government quite blithely did was take the planning scheme for Manningham, draw over it with a crayon and then say all of these areas where there are main road transport, no visitor car parking required for apartment blocks. Shoved down our throat, just like that. All of the visitor car parking in all the apartment blocks, right through the higher density areas of Manningham, wiped out. One stroke of a pen, implemented by state government. And we as a council are going to be facing decisions over the next couple of years when these planning permits come up, and we're going to be saying, where's the visitor car parking? The residents will be saying, why isn't there visitor car parking? And we'll be saying, well, the state government wiped it out, so they don't have to put it in. And I reckon there might be one or two people in our city who think that's a pretty bad idea. I know I'm one of them, but I think we might get a little bit of flack from our residents when we get a few planning permit applications in the next couple of years along our main roads in the apartment blocks. And our not so main roads as well, as it happens. So, we as a council get to, through this review process, get to try and put our twist on what we want on the planning scheme. And one of the things I'm sure we'll try and do is put that right back in the planning scheme. I don't like our chances, but I'd like to think that will be one of the outcomes in this review that we'll pursue. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 years. When I mentioned Amendment C110 in an earlier planning decision we made, that was one of the initiatives the last council put through in their planning scheme review and was an outcome they achieved at the end of their term of office. So I'm hopeful that in this review that we're kicking off formally tonight through this, we'll be able to see some quite detailed improvements to the planning scheme for the benefit of our city, which hopefully in the end the Mandarins in Spring Street will pass. We shall see.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Any speakers against? There being no further debate, I will.
I have a question.
Councillor Haynes.
Councillor McLeish mentioned these apartments. Does that also planning thing adhere to townhouses and other developments as well, or just apartment buildings?
I'll ask the Director for City Planning and Community to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, all multi-unit development.
Thank you.
Within 400 metres of a principal public transport network.
Thank you.
There being no further debate, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.4, Heritage Advisory Committee. Consideration for nominations for community representatives. Do I have a mover? Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Piccinini.
Mr Mayor, this motion seeks council endorsement of the councillor committee's recommendation to appoint Jim Poulter and Bernice Charity as community members to the Heritage Advisory Committee for a period of 3 years. Many would be aware of Jim Poulter's qualifications and background, given that he's recently received the keys to the city. Mr. Coulter he has an encyclopedic knowledge of our local Aboriginal history, and he's also a descendant of John and Mary Shivers, who were the second people to settle in Manningham in 1840. So much of his family history is our European settler history. Bernice Charity has lived in Manningham since 1966, and she's interested in historical buildings, the artists who settled in Warrandyte, the Orchardist families, the importance of the Wurundjeri people to our city. And she's also an active member in the community as a volunteer with U3LA and a member of the local Probus Club. So both of these applicants are well qualified to be our community members to the Heritage Advisory Committee. And this motion also notes that there are 3 nominated representatives of our local historical society, and those representatives will be Eric Collier from the Doncaster and Templestowe Historical Society, Margaret Kelly from the Warrandyte Historical Society, and Barry Box from the Wonga Park Historical Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Zafiropoulos? Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. 10.5, naming of reserves policy. Do I have a mover? Councillor Haynes.
I move the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor Haynes.
Mr Mayor, just fellow councillors, this is the naming of reserves policy. We haven't had one in the past. We've had the Geographic Places Act, and we've had the naming of rules for places in Victoria. And this is quite structured and well worded with the naming of reserves issue part at 2.2, the using of commemorative names at part point 2.3, and the naming of the delegated authority at 2.4. It says granted under delegation the authority for the Director of Planning and Community. Can we please change that to put the Director, oh, it is Planning and Community, sorry. No, I thought they'd changed your name yet again. I thought it was City Planning. So sorry about that.
It should be council.
Well, and I was going to also ask if we were going to name any parks, can that be added that it comes to council first as far as to councils to be informed, because it states on it if we're going to name them through a deceased of someone's name, obviously that has to go to the family. So I'm hoping that councillors are informed way before there's a plaque or a name on a reserve that hasn't come to council. So I'm wondering
I think you're asking for an amendment, but I think we'll ask a question first. If we could just clarify the question.
Question first. Okay. Question first before anything else.
Mr Mayor, obviously councils can call in anything, but the way the policy is worded, I would have delegation. If you want to ensure, because it's about the position, so you might instruct me to do it, but if I'm not here in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, if you want that to be the case, it's probably better that you have it in the policy that councillors be notified.
So, Mr Mayor, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
A follow-up question to that is, if we were to add a sentence in there to come to council, would that have to come to every public council meeting when there is a park being named, or if one of the parks we're going to rename? Okay. So I'm not looking for that amendment today, councillors. I am asking that we pass the one before us and that our Director of City and Community be able to act accordingly as a director and be able to inform us at briefings prior to making a decision. So at this point I would like to leave it as it has come before us, councillors.
That's a relief. Thank you. Councillor Zafiropoulos.
To add, other than this draft policy is consistent with the protocols that have been set out at the Open Space Committee that Councillor Goff and I are members of. And I'm not sure if we mentioned that naming, commemorative naming, should only be in relation to deceased persons. Okay.
Yeah, I did mention that, and
Yeah,
also
good.
that the family be asked.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any speakers against? Sorry, was that were you asking a question, or did I miss that?
No, I'm not going to
Okay,
ask any
no.
questions to any deceased people, so I'll just leave it.
Oh, okay, so we're up to seconding. Are there any speakers against?
I've got one question.
Councillor Galway.
So if we're here in this recommendation, and I hope I'm reading the right thing, is it we're asked to support the naming of this park as Maccabee Reserve?
Oh, yes.
Maccabee was a racehorse, yes?
That was a diva. That was Mackay Diva.
Is this a person, Maccabee? That's my question.
Sorry, Director of City Planning and Community.
Mr. Mayor, that's the name of the abutting street. So I'm not sure about its history, but that's what the policy.
That's in line with the policy.
Suggests. Yeah.
Okay, lost in history.
There being no further questions, Councillor McLeish, are you? I will put that motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 11, Assets and Engineering. 11.1, 2018 thank you, 17-18 Capital Works Status Report, end of June Status Report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Pitchney.
Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Pitchney.
Mr Mayor, councillors are requested to receive and note the Capital Works Status Report for the period of June 2018. And some of the highlights of this report are that 95.6% of the 17-18 Capital Works program was spent, which is above Council's performance target of 95%, which is a great result. And also 53 of 59 projects were fully completed in that financial year, and a total of 220 sub-projects were completed as well in that financial year. So that's a very good result, and well done to the Director of Asset and Engineering, Mr. Harrison, and his team.
Thank you, Councillor Pitchney. Councillor Kleiner.
I won't ask a question, but I will just say congratulations to Director Lee Harrison and your team for another stellar report. It's great, and we're going in the right direction. I don't know how many reports in a row that it's just getting stronger and better, and that's great. So congratulations, and please pass that on to the rest of those that get to do all the hard work and often get forgotten to be thanked. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Any speakers against? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. Item 12, Shared Services. There are no reports. Item 13, Chief Executive Officer. 13.1, Strategic Risk Register Report to Council. 6-monthly report, 30th of June 2018. Do I have a mover? Councillor Goff.
Move as on the paper.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galway, thank you. Councillor Goff.
Mr Mayor, this is mainly process, and I suppose in good governance we do, as a council, every 6 months have to look at our risks as a business or as a council, and input into that I know is with staff and senior officers as well as the CEO, but also I believe that the audit process and the internal auditors have a duty in regard to that. And this has been off, I believe, to the Audit Committee and has been endorsed. So it's coming here for us to note, not even endorse, Mr Mayor, so we can note it.
Thank you. Councillor Gubley?
Nothing to add, thank you.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. 13.2, business continuity managing policy update. I have a mover. Councillor McLeish. I have a seconder.
Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor McLeish, thank you. I have a seconder. Councillor Chen. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to recommend this particular policy update to my fellow councillors. It is part of a two-year review of this particular policy. The policy review has been informed by the various disaster recovery exercises that have taken place. They, of course, occur in the context of the existing disaster recovery plan that the organisation has. And I'm pleased to say that the organisation has come a long way in my 6 years on council in this particular space. I believe they are at the point precisely where they should be in this particular context. We have an operational business continuity plan. We have a management policy which impacts that plan, and the organisation conducts exercises on an annual basis and is quietly confident in its capacity to withstand a significant disaster in respect of our IT, and that is a marked difference from where it was 6 years ago, and that has come about through the very hard work of the organisation. That's not just in IT, but it's right across the organisation, because everyone in the organisation has to participate in this process. It's a business continuity plan, it's not a technology continuity plan. And the organisation is very well positioned thanks to the great work of the entire organisation in supporting the testing effort that goes through and the planning that is put in place by all areas of the organisation, and the detailed plans that the IT operation has to provide that technical continuity. So I congratulate all of them concerned. Having read the plan thoroughly, I think it's very, very effectively reviewed and improved.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Chen?
Nothing to add.
Any speakers? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. 13.4, sorry. 13.3, documents for sealing. We have a mover. Councillor Haynes.
I move that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of the following document: consent to build over an easement agreement under section 173 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Council and Warrandyte Community Retirement Housing Cooperative Limited, 10 West End Road, Warrandyte.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galbally. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. 13.4, record of assembly of councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
Mr Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 14, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 15, councillors' question time. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor McLeish.
Mr Mayor, I was wondering if you're aware that a little over a week ago, the Australian Institute of Project Management had their Achievement Awards, and that our council was entered in a number of categories for Victoria. And in the categories in which our council's information technology operation won state awards includes ICT telecommunications for their online view, pavement and lodgement system, small projects for the record management transformation, organisation change management for the Citizen Connect Contact Centre, a high commendation, and for the project program director, Fiona Park, our transformation manager. She won the state award in that category. It's a great outcome, Mr Mayor, when our city is actually winning awards for its information technology. It's a mile away from where we were 6 years ago, and it's down to the very hard work of the organisation as a whole, but in particular the director, Philip Lee, his his head of IT, David Bell Chambers, and of course the program and project director, Fiona Park, and the team working for that particular, all of that group, who have delivered some very substantial returns to our council for the investment we've made, very substantial improvements in productivity, notably in the planning space. The integration of technology into the planning space has greatly facilitated the improvements in performance in that aspect of our organisation. And I'd like to commend the entire IT organisation for what they've achieved in winning 4 state awards, and hopefully they go on to win some national awards, which they're now in the running for, having won the state awards. So I'd like to congratulate them all. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor McLeish. Councillor Kleinert.
I know it's not a question, but it follows on from Councillor McLeish. Manningham's received another award in the sense of, in the setting of Tim Lawson has on Friday won the 2018 Paul James Everett Scholarship established by Procurement Australia. So it's wonderful under the director of Philip Lee again. This scholarship recognises and rewards high achieving individuals in the procurement field by funding a scholarship to overseas study. The winning of the scholarship was actually done in a competitive process involving presentations to Procurement Australia Scholarship Panel. So again, I think this is really wonderful when we've set ourselves that target of being the very best council in Victoria. Things like this really reflect that the organisation is doing all it can, and that should be recognised. So congratulations again to the director and the team, because it's the team that you know, make these leaders grow. So,
Councillor Zafiropoulos.
Mr. Mayor, at the risk of being repetitive, I'd like to also congratulate the staff, because in recent times we have won a number of awards. On Friday I was at an all-day MAV technology seminar, and I was so proud. I didn't know, but all of a sudden, you know, my municipality comes up on a couple of occasions. Philip was there in a couple of the offices, and I felt really proud. But I don't know whether I can phrase it as a question, but as a suggestion, could I ask if it's possible for council to be notified for all the applications we made for an award, as well as the ones that we've won. Now, I know that most of the awards we've won recently have to do with the great job that our officers are doing, but it might also correlate with the number of applications we make, so that's why I'd like to see how many we do.
We'll discuss that in SBS, I think.
I'm sure it's not.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Councillor Chen.
This is a question. Well, Mr. Mayor, recently I have received many positive feedbacks about our neighbourhood park development program, and I wish to thank our staff for their dedication and hard work. But there are also some suggestions, perhaps raised by the local residents regarding safety and cleanliness in the park. And for example, the behaviors of some young adults at the skate park inside Norfolk Reserve, but also other issues such as lack of rubbish bins, lighting, and perhaps consideration of security camera. And I just wondering, what measures do we have to improve security and safety within our park to encourage positive uses? Because Manningham is considered the safest municipality in our eastern region, so we need to ensure that our residents continue to feel safe. Thank you.
We'll take that on notice and review it at an SBS. Thank you, Councillor Chen.
Could I provide a brief response to this, because
we'll just thanks. We'll just leave it for SBS. Councillor McLeish, is this another question?
Mr. Mayor, did you know that today, Mr. Mayor, there was quite a momentous announcement for our city from the state government? After over 120 years of waiting, 120 years, Mr. Mayor.
And only 50 more to
Someone
wait.
is proposing to build a train line to Doncaster, would you believe? Oddly enough, like the government's proposing a line that doesn't actually take you to the city. That's slightly disappointing, you might say, but it is good news to see that someone is indeed proposing a suburban rail loop that one day, one hopes, will get built. Mind you, it isn't the first time someone's proposed a rail line to Doncaster. It was proposed 120 years ago. In fact, it's been proposed many, many times. And the artfully drawn maps of the suburban rail network these days conspire to actually make it look like our city doesn't exist. The wedge just disappears in the maps, and it looks like this segment of Melbourne has a rail line when in fact it doesn't. The only suburban municipality without a rail line. So perhaps, Mr Mayor, we will have some good fortune and a rail line may come here one day.
Let's continue to hope. Councillor Goff.
No, perhaps, Mr Mayor, we could actually give this to the Historical Society.
For their collection of rail plans.
For the collection of rail plans that never got built, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Are there any more questions or jokes? No? We have item 16, confidential reports. There are no confidential reports, so I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you, public. And thank you, directors and staff.